One of these trade rumors is interesting because of the team that the player is linked to. And the other trade rumor is interesting because, what the hell, this guy's available? Today, we are talking about the Winnipeg Jets and the Minnesota Wild, two Central Division, I was going to say rivals, but is that really fair this season? I don't know. And two names on these two teams that could potentially find themselves moved elsewhere by the end of the year. Starting out with the Winnipeg Jets, because I think these guys being at the bottom of the standings makes this a little bit more of an accessible idea. We've got a conversation on Jonathan Toews, 37 years old, 6'2", 201, signed on till the end of this season, making $2 million a year. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Say what you want about the way Jonathan Toews found himself back to playing hockey. Say what you want about his symptoms and the issues that he had dealt with in the early 2020s, which caused him to miss out on 2 seasons worth of NHL play. Say all you want about that and say what you want about the vomit-inducing journey he took to get back to hockey, but now, with his brand new team signed on to a 1-year deal, Jonathan Toews has 19 points in 50 games, on pace for 31 points over a full 82. I don't think anybody was really expecting Jonathan Toews at 37 years old to come back and immediately be the 80-point guy that he was a few years ago, especially after a multi-year break. But the fact that he laced him up and even decided to get back into the National Hockey League is a good sign, and it's one of these things that Captain Serious Jonathan Toews is known for, that work ethic, that perseverance, that drive that he's got. The fact that he had to take some time off was heartbreaking in and of itself, but the fact that he came back is inspiring. But the problem is the Winnipeg Jets kind of suck. So for Jonathan Toews, as a 1-year player, you do have the potential for him to be used as a rental, which is where we head over to the Oilers Nation Everyday Show on, I believe it's dailyfaceoff.com, I'm pretty sure. Not really too sure, but still, Oilers Nation Everyday, the newest episode had Jeff Merrick on as a guest, and he did go out there and specifically mention the Edmonton Oilers as a potential fit for Toews. The video clip is 1:22, and you can see what fans are going out there and saying about Jonathan Toews to the Oil. You got my attention. Also, and most importantly, asset-wise, it's always cheaper to add a winger than a center. Edmonton has plenty of center options and depth there with Roslovic, Henrique, Frederic. They can all fill in at 3C if there's an injury. Get a top 6 winger. Make Nuge 3C. Another reply says, hey, Toews would be a horrible fit with the Oilers. Who would even consider this as a rational thought? The 20-minute debate on why the Oiler big ads this year should be Vinny, Toews, and Jenner was the most mind-melting take I had ever heard. Okay, there are a number of folks going out there and strongly disagreeing with the idea of Toews in Edmonton. But I think for me personally, while it's true that there are pros and cons to whatever it is you're doing by acquiring a center with the Oilers, just the fan factor and just the idea of Jonathan Toews being an Oiler is already enough to get me interested in whatever potential fit this could look like. Not even to say that Jonathan Toews would be a great Oiler, but as a middle to bottom 6 guy, I don't think there are too many other options that are significantly better than Toews. This season with the Winnipeg Jets, he's getting, let's say, 16 minutes a night, some 17-minute games in there, so he is utilized. There was a really good goal-scoring streak that he went on at the start of January, but for the most part, Toews has been hot and cold this season. Look at this stint with pointless games. Look at this stint with pointless games. Jonathan Toews has not been consistent, but that's fine. The guy's 37 years old and he's coming back from whatever it was that he was doing in, I think it was India? Not too sure. Let's just Google that real quick. Jonathan Toews, and then we will search India. Was he in India? Yeah, okay. He spent 5 weeks in India. What an interesting healing journey for Toews from over a year ago. But if you're an Oilers fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of Toews over to your team? Do you think this guy could be a meaningful addition to your roster? Or would you rather have your center spot on the 3rd and 4th line be filled up by somebody else? Now, shifting gears from Winnipeg over to Minnesota, I wanted to talk about this guy. A guy who, at one point throughout the course of the year, Was he not the number one goaltender in the National Hockey League in terms of save percentage? It's Jesper Wallstedt, ladies and gentlemen. 23 years old, signed on to the end of 2027, making $2.2 million a year. Oy, 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 what a crazy dollar amount for a guy that at one point was the top goalie in the league and who still only has a .914 save percentage this season. That is amazing. Jesper Wallstedt started out the year super hot with Minnesota. Multiple shutouts, 3 shutouts in 4 games, make that 4 shutouts in 6 games, add on 9-4-4s and 9-2-1s. Yes, it has been a little bit shaky for Wallstedt the past 3 games. Since January 12th, the guy has had a pretty bad run. But Wallstedt is seen as one of the best goaltenders of the future in the NHL. And so the idea of trading him away obviously feels very, very strange. But this is what Michael Russo and Joe Smith of The Athletic went out there and wrote about. They raised the possibility of the Wild using Jesper Wallstedt as trade bait. The Wild believe they are a scoring winger or a first-line center away from true contender status. And I guess that makes sense, you know? They got Boldy, they got Kaprizov, they got Tarasenko, they got Quinn Hughes, they have Philip Gustafsson, who, for the most part, has been pretty solid the past few years. Jesper Wallstedt was shot out of a cannon to open up this season, but at the end of the day, he is not the number one. So, if you operate from a position of surplus, you could debate that the Minnesota Wild do not have much use for Jesper Wallstedt's dominance this season. Maybe long-term, he becomes a Vezina-caliber guy, and that's very fair, but if Jesper Wallstedt is available on the market because Minnesota wants a top-line center or they want a top-line forward in general, I do question whether or not a Wallstedt trade is actually more likely here. And the funny part is, hey, the TSN trade board, it was updated 2 days ago, and Jesper Wallstedt is listed as the 35th highest trade value asset. Maybe not necessarily trade value, but the likelihood of the guys getting traded, you can say. For what it's worth, he is ranked underneath Washington's first-round pick, but still, Jesper Wallstedt is now being discussed as a very legitimate trade discussion target for other NHL teams and fan bases. Whether or not there is a team that could cough up the price for Wallstedt, like, for example, sticking with Vancouver, I know this is not going to happen, but sticking with Vancouver, if it's Elias Pettersson for Jesper Wallstedt, I don't know necessarily if a team like the Canucks would be interested in pulling off a trade like that. I get it, there already was a deal made between Minnesota and Vancouver, so that's why it's kind of funny to bring up the Canucks as a Wallstedt target. But in all honesty, I don't think the Canucks really need another goaltending prospect. They have some pretty good ones already chilling in the system. Medvedev is supposed to be very good, and Tolopilo is looking pretty strong as well. Maybe not at the caliber of a Jesper Wallstedt, but still, sometimes passable goaltending is good enough to get you by a few rounds. But with that said, if you're a Minnesota Wild fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about the idea of Wallstedt being used as trade bait to go out there and get yourselves a top-line center or a scoring winger? If you're an Oilers fan, how do you feel about the idea of Jonathan Toews heading over to your organization in a trade at the deadline, as a rental, whatever? It's Jonathan freaking Toews. Jets fans, Wild fans, Oiler fans, let me know in the comments all your opinions about these trade ideas. I hope you enjoyed this British Ashroll 99. And bye.